Johnny Cash probably should have said, "I took some pills and fell asleep on the tour bus." That would probably be more accurate.
But I get where gay people are coming from too, though, because it's not a level playing field. So when you see like all this, like it's almost like shitting on people when they're down. Like here's a perfect example. Like this Opie thing that's going on.
Yes.
With this, if you don't know, Opie many years ago stomped on this homeless guy's cake, and he thought it would be cute to put it online, and people are so fucking mad at him because it's a really douchey thing to do.
It's been online for years, though. He just retweeted it, I think. But it's been up for 7 years.
But the fact that what people didn't like is people have a sense of humanity. And they look at this guy, and he's a homeless guy. He's fucking down and out. And here's this millionaire radio DJ who thinks it's funny to stomp on his cake. Like, you know what I mean?
In that context, and that's something that, unfortunately, you can't, like, we would do a walkover from K-Rock every day, which you did with us.
Yeah.
And that guy was Andrew, and he was the guy we saw every day. He was a guy we talked to, we had on the air, we gave money to him, we would give him food. Like, we had a really good relationship with this guy. I think that's why he was offering cake, because we had stopped by so many times and handed him food. He had some cake, and Ope did a dick thing, but it was literally just to make everybody laugh. It wasn't to dehumanize this guy or to degrade him. It was something he would have done to anybody else that he knew. And I know that made people go, well, too bad. But the reality was, the context of that relationship with Andrew, the homeless guy, was not some, hey, bum, here's some money, we can do what we want. It didn't feel like that. It didn't come off like that to any of us.
Yeah, but he got really depressed after Opie stomped on his cake.
But he had just started drinking again, too. We were trying to get him sober. And I think
that's a good way to do it. Step on his cake.
Well, it was a piece of shit cake anyway. It was a fucking, it was another garbage.
I see you're supporting Opie, and I'm friends with Opie, too.
I'm supporting Opie only because I was there through that entire walkover with Andrew, and I saw him 50 times before and after that.
So in context.
Yeah, I would have been fucking, it was cringy, and I was like, oh, God.
Did he give him anything after he stomped on his cake? Did he give him any money?
Of course he did. I think he gave him like $100. And then people were going, that wasn't good enough. They're like, this is what I'm saying. They're like, oh, you could dehumanize him and then give him $100? But it wasn't looked at like, nobody felt like, wow, he dehumanized this guy, because he was somebody we talked to all the time and had great interactions with. So that's why it didn't feel like, I understand people seeing it though and going, oh, what the fuck is going on, you piece of shit. Like, I get seeing a 1.5 minute clip. Maybe I would feel the same way if I didn't have the luxury of having been there throughout that entire time.
Well, here's a perfect example. If that homeless guy was getting in an argument with another homeless guy and the homeless guy jumped on his cake, then it would be okay. Because there's one homeless guy getting over on another homeless guy and stomping on his cake. But when a millionaire DJ guy does it, look, I know what he was doing, and I know what that audience is like. When you guys are, Opie and Anthony's my favorite show ever to do, because it's such a hang and everybody's making everybody else laugh.
Yeah.
And it's like what we were talking about before the show today. It's like what's okay for you and I to talk about in our jobs, like as stand-up comedians, for most people that those same words and thoughts would get you fired, would get you kicked out of the office, you get written up, you get sued. You can't have that sort of mentality. But for us, it's so normal. So when you're hanging out with Opie and Anthony Cumia, and you guys are just talking mad shit, and you're on the air as you're walking across the street, and you're just trying to make each other laugh. And one of the things that people do when they try to make each other laugh is they cross the line.
Sure.
They completely, brutally cross the line. And that's the way to do that there. You brutally cross the line, you got to jump on the homeless guy's cake. And Opie, in doing that, it sounds like a cop-out on my part because he's my friend, and I would never have done what he did, but I know what his motivation was.
Exactly. And our audience will accept a lot. But honestly, there is a humanity to them. Like that homeless shopping spree we would do, the homeless guys would never mistreat. Like literally, they would treat like rock stars. They would go to the mall. Thousands of people would be cheering them, buying them shit. There are people we had gotten to know. So it was like the people that mentioned, then they would do this homeless shopping spree.
Right.
It's like they weren't. It didn't feel like, oh my God. It felt like a fucked up thing to do, but it didn't feel as literal as, oh my God, he's a millionaire stepping on the food of a homeless man, because I don't think that was the intent behind it, other than just being a dick in that moment to a guy who he knew we had given food and money to, and we were going to give money to. It's like,
I know what you're saying.
He knew it was just a momentary dick thing to do.
And he just did it in the sense of for humor.
To be silly, not to humiliate Andrew. Nobody wanted to humiliate the guy.
The problem is when you see things out of context, it's like you were talking about earlier about Paula Dean, you don't know the entirety of a person when you see one event. I mean, Opie's a great guy. We had him on the podcast. He's a great guy. And I always credit you guys with being one of the reasons why I wanted to get into podcasting in the first place. It was because of doing your show. Because your show was the only show that I'd ever done where it was just there was no like rigid set of like, this is this now, and then we're going to go to the wacky 5 at 5, and then there's Bob on the Chopper. There was nothing.
Right.
It was a hang. It was a complete total hang. Every time I've ever done it, whether it's with Burr or with, I mean, fucking, how many times have I done it? I've done it so many times with so many different comics, with Rich, or with I never got to do it with Patrice. The only thing I did with Patrice was when we did that thing in Vegas together, which was a lot of fun too.
Oh wow, yeah.
That's how I got to hang with Patrice. It's the only time I really got to hang with him outside of like seeing him early on in the day when I didn't even know him.
He was one of my favorite people, even though he was very dominating and no one could out yap Patrice loudness. But he was so much fun to do radio with. Like he was one of my favorite guys ever because. To make him, like, if you made him laugh, you knew you were funny. Yeah. He didn't give it to people for no reason. He didn't give pity bullshit. He was just too unconcerned with hurting people's feelings to do that. He didn't care. And one of my favorite things with him is I convinced him that Face Off was a shitty movie, and it's one of my favorite moments. It happened at K-Rock. It was
John Travolta and Nick Cage. Who he was arguing against that?
He loved it. And I fucking convinced, but it was a fun, friendly, to watch him go like, like to see him give in made me, it was one of my favorite moments of all time in that, just to see this, because he was such a giant of a guy intellectually. Like the greatest mistake people could make with Patrice was to think, he's a big, loud black guy. Patrice was a brilliant motherfucker and could out-talk almost anybody and could out-logic almost. So when you had moments like that, it was friendly, It wasn't like an aggressive argument. You were like, God, that just was one of the most satisfying moments of my career.
Yeah, well, it's the opportunity to be around fun people like that, the rare human beings that you don't necessarily come across. If you have a regular job, if you're working as an insurance salesman, how many Patrice O'Neills do you come across in your life that you get to hang out with?
No, just probably calling because they're late on their payments. quite a few, I think. One more thing, by the way, before I forget, I want to say about Opie, too, about homeless, is, he's the one, not that it matters, but he's the guy that pushed Homeless Mustard through, Daniel Mustard. Yeah. And tried to get him a recording contract and like really tried to take care of the guy.
That's that guy who sang that song Creep?
Creep.
That guy's really talented.
He is talented. But it's like, and Opie took a real concern with him and his sobriety. And again, I'm not saying I'm not trying to say don't be mad, be mad. But again, don't think you understand the totality of a guy because he did one silly thing in a different context to make his radio guys and some fans laugh.
You're so good at breaking shit down, dude. You said that. There was not a hint of bias there. You were being completely honest about it. I really value that in the way you talk, and that's why I was really happy when I watched that Kamal Bell show. Oh, yeah. M. Kamal Bell?
I
totally biased.
Yeah, Kamal Bell, yeah.
Which was
W.
Kamal Bell. You and
Lindy West.
Lindy West, who's a feminist blogger for Jezebel, which is a feminist website. And what I loved about it, man, was first of all, you never got upset. You were rational and logical, and you were talking about it in a very measured way, and you're being really friendly while you're discussing this. And in her defense, it's a very tricky subject to breach for a woman, and she was saying a lot of shit like comedy clubs are filled with rooms filled with angry men, and you didn't even flinch. You didn't go after her. Like she had like these digs about like, you're allowed to just joke about it, but I'm allowed to tell you you're a dick.
Yeah, I didn't take it personally because I didn't think she hadn't. The blog wasn't about me.
It was about a guy any guy making a dick joke
or
a rape joke,
or certain rape jokes that put. And this is the tricky part of Lindy West because a lot of people would say she's for censorship, but she really wasn't. She didn't like the jokes that she thought minimalized the victim in a rape.
Right
now, it's hard to logically say, well, yeah, minimalizing the victim of rape is a good thing. But what people forget, they went after Sam Morril. A lot of jokes are just misdirection.
Who's Sam Morril?
He's a comedian in New York who had done some like domestic violence jokes or whatever. But in a misdirection joke, you go for the most obvious or opposite thing. So
that
sometimes it is
expect.
violent.
Yeah.
sometimes, like I did one joke, and this didn't come up in that show, but like I was talking about seeing it a girl. Now, I don't know if she had a good time or was raped in a porta potty. I'm not going to go through the whole joke before, but those it was at a concert, an outdoor concert. So the two most opposite things I could think of, if I said I didn't know if she had a good time or not a very good time, who gives a shit? Fuck you.
Exactly.
Raped in a porta potty.
You're painting a picture.
Yeah. If I said I didn't know if she was beaten in a porta potty or raped in a porta potty, nobody would have laughed because they're too close. So the fact, I mean, I'm explaining this to the audience, not to you.
Right.
The fact that you take two things that are such polar opposites, sometimes the polar opposite you land on for the joke is a horrible thing that minimalizes the victim. And every Catholic priest joke is somehow minimalizing the victim. Comedy does that, and I don't believe that it has to just be speaking truth to power. I think that's part of it. But I think that as long as your intention is genuinely to be funny and not to humiliate a person for real, I think it's allowable, and it has to be, because it gets to be too subjective after that.
Well, it's an art form, and if you don't like that art form, I completely and totally understand that. Sure. You don't have to participate in the shows. You don't have to go. But when you're being like hypercritical about it and trying to get people to stop doing it, you're going to make it so that that art form is not available. Like the really fucked up thing that you don't mean art form is not available. Just like rap music. I mean, what is going on in rap music? Are they really running around killing people and selling cocaine every day? No, most of what they're doing is talking shit about something.
Right.
It's no different than the movie Scarface. Nobody really died in that movie, okay? You're painting a picture. It's a gross, horrific picture, but some people like that. They like to watch Scarface. They like to listen to rap music. They want to hear a dirty comic say horrendous, inappropriate things that are fucked up. One of my favorites is Otto and George. He would say some of the most fucked up, ridiculous, over-the-top shit, but the reason why he did it is because that's like what shocks the shit out of you and makes you laugh when you least expect it, and it was like well-crafted on top of that.
He made me laugh harder than anybody's ever made me laugh in a club we were doing in a pizzeria in Pennsylvania. And he said something, it was barbarism, and it made me. It was because the imagery was such. It was such poetry that he flew off the top with, and it was awful. And have I ever told you the story?
No.
And it won't hold. Like if I say it now, it's not going to be the greatest joke. But the beauty of it, we were in a pizzeria. It was an awful gig, and it was like we're like real pizzeria bench seats. It stunk.
Right.
And there was a bar next to it, and I'm watching. Otto's just up there fucking struggling and hating it. And in the middle of this dirty act, the booker's girlfriend walks down the aisle with her 7-year-old son, which was so inappropriate, and everybody looked, and it just derails the show. And Otto just said, because everyone looked at this, so the puppet addressed it.
Right.
And said... isn't that cute? I'd like to grab him by the ankles and smash his skull onto a fucking sink. And it was a Caligula reference to the end of Caligula. And it made me the speed at which he put those words together and the violence attached to that. And the imagery of that, I've never laughed harder at anything anybody's ever said in a comedy club because I knew what had just happened. I immediately saw the end of Caligula where they grabbed the ankles and they smashed the fucking head into the steps. And I'm like, the genius to pull that out in this moment and word it that quickly. It was beauty. It was beauty, but it was a horrible thing. And nobody laughed because of course they didn't. This was a Philly pizzeria. Nobody understood
how funny that was.
Because if he had just said that and I hadn't seen Caligula, I might not have laughed as hard. But the fact that I immediately saw what he did with it, I wanted to hug him for that. I'm like, you brilliant, brilliant guy. He's a brilliant fuck, man.
He's a very funny guy. And his style of comedy, much like Dice's style of comedy, is ridiculous, over the top, things they don't really mean. Like Dice has some bit about how a woman gets pregnant, and it's one of the most hilarious, ridiculous bits because it goes into like this medical or how you can make a gay kid. Like how, it's so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, idiocy.
It's complete idiot, but it's hilarious. And for people to say that that's a homophobic joke or that's like, he doesn't mean a word he's saying. Do you understand that this is like an art piece that you're watching? This is just a ridiculous, over-the-top art piece. And for you to say that it's not, for you to say that I shouldn't be enjoying it, well, then we have to go with a fine-tooth comb over virtually all of pop culture. Every song, we have to find out what the true meaning behind movies are, what's the implication on society, because it can't just be humor. It's a dumb way of looking at it, because you know it's a joke. If it's a stand-up comedy show, you know it's a fucking joke. At least in that sense, there's no excuse. With a rap song, like, no, it's not a joke. Maybe he's being serious. With a movie, maybe they're trying to promote that lifestyle. Maybe that's real. It's a stand-up comedy show. The only reason why people are laughing is because it's a joke.
Well, people do know that, but it's unfunny people attempting to influence. It's just people trying to influence what you say. It's like